Guys, we'll get started. I know we're running a couple of minutes behind, but thank you very much. What a tremendous panel before, and I'll go through a couple of comments, a couple of things that I captured as I was listening to the guys. Really fantastic data, but let me introduce myself and then I'll have the panelists introduce themselves here, starting with Nasir. But myself, MJ Vaidya, I'm a partner with Ernst & Young, as well as I've been teaching with NYU for the last 7 years. I really do enjoy that, and I enjoyed Oren's comments. I was prior to EY, I was the CISO with General Motors, where I led the connected car security strategy. So very interesting comments in terms of telecom and what that car security strategy. So very interesting comments in terms of telecom and what that means as far as IoT is concerned. So looking forward to this panel. Nasir.
Yeah, hi. My name is Nasir Memon. I'm a professor in the Computer Science and Engineering Department at New York University. I founded the cybersecurity program there in 1999, a long time ago. And currently I'm also the Associate Dean for Online Learning.
Great. Hey, Alan.
So I will go next.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm Alan Cohn. I'm a partner at the law firm of Steptoe & Johnson in Washington, D.C. I co-chair the blockchain and cryptocurrency practice there. I was previously an assistant secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. I had the privilege of serving with folks like Chad, Rod, and a whole bunch of other great folks. I'm also an adjunct professor at Georgetown Law, and I've taught classes there on national security and domestic incident management, domestic preparedness, things of that nature, for over 10 years. So.
Thank you, Alan. Wouter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wouter Veenstra. I work as a manager outreach and partnerships at the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise at the Secretariat, which is based in The Hague in the Netherlands. Our organization is focused on cyber capacity building worldwide. I will talk about that later. That's it for now.
Thank you. Good, Sasha.
Yeah, my name is Sascha Meyer. I'm the head of IT and cyber resilience from IWC Schaffhausen, the watchmaker. And also next to it, I'm also doing trainings for cybersecurity on an academy in Zurich, also focusing on awareness and general ICT security trainings.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks everyone. And I think what's interesting is if you look across this panel, we have private, public sector, academia covered, so it would be great to hear everyone's comments and thoughts on this topic. And it's a very important topic as far as cyber education is concerned. You know, how do we leverage this very important platform when it comes to cybersecurity to drive education, to drive STEM, to drive STEAM education globally speaking? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I just want to capture a couple of things that from the previous panel that came up. From Chad, human talent gap is outstripping our capability. Or in connected car and the challenges it presents from an IoT perspective and the skill sets and skill gaps that it presents. Hans, where's the talent? New education systems are needed in the connected systems and environment. And then Rick also mentioned security is a marketing tool. So is this security just a CISO problem, or does it extend to the business as well as law schools and other areas as well? So definitely would love to hear some thoughts here. Nasir, maybe we'll start with you. From an academic perspective, when you think about cybersecurity, a lot of challenges in this space. What do you see as far as education gaps are concerned in this area? Not just from an NYU perspective, but you know, across the US, but of course globally as well.
So one is a gap of capacity, right? The number of graduates we produce. At NYU, we've had a pretty robust program for 15, 20 years, 100 people a year, and the need is a few orders of magnitude more than that, right? So academia needs to sort of develop ways to be able to sort of fill this gap in ways that are affordable, scalable, and also more open. I think one of the things that academia does is it has a very high bar to entry. The fancier school I am, the harder it is for you to get in. It should not be that way. And so the openness factor should also be addressed by academia. Those are a few thoughts that come to my mind right away. There's a lot more to be done.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And there's more to cover as well.
Yeah.
Alan, obviously, a very strong background from a government perspective and teaching it from a law school perspective. Any thoughts on your end? Yep.
So it's interesting. When I was teaching, I started teaching at Georgetown Law at the same time I started at Homeland Security. And it was during the 2008-2009 transition when somebody came from the General Counsel's office and did a presentation on emergency management law in the US for the transition team, and they got it wrong. And so I ended up pulling together a casebook as a result of that, just so that we had it compiled, and the General Counsel's office went on to compile a better compilation. But the point is, I'd echo that point that was made on the earlier panel that Rick made, but broaden it out. Cybersecurity is not just a technical problem from a people perspective. There is an enormous challenge with STEM and STEAM education and making sure that we have people in that pipeline, but we must make sure that we're educating people outside of that pipeline as well, particularly people who are going to go into leadership positions, whether it's in industry, in government, in civil society. You think about the way that the military rotates people around so that they pick up different skills. We need to make sure that we are incorporating into business programs, into legal programs, into other types of professional programs, and the professional development programs that industry uses and the government uses, an awareness of this subject, an understanding of the threats, an understanding of how we manage risk in this area, how we coordinate and cooperate. Some of the trends that emerge from future studies now, obviously people see a retreat to perhaps more to national borders, more reassertion of national sovereignty, and that's all true in the physical world, but in the cyber world, it doesn't respect those same types of boundaries. So making sure that there is a complementary set of education outside of the STEAM and STEM and technical aspects, I think, is just as important and needs just as much attention as making sure that STEM and STEAM pipeline is there.
Great point. And Wouter, when you think about partnerships, is this just a university, college level issue? Alan just mentioned it needs to be continuous across broader than just IT or security space. Any thoughts from a partnership perspective you could share? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I think it should be much broader than just on that level. E-education is going to be one of the major challenges in the forthcoming years. Especially in Western countries, you have a shrinking workforce. At the same time, the digitization of society is ongoing, which means that you not only need cybersecurity professionals, but you need cybersecurity awareness among all workforce. And in order to address this upcoming shortage, which is being acknowledged both by governments as by companies nowadays, given the many initiatives on this particular topic, it really should be addressed at all levels, starting at elementary school, at high school, and at university level, of course. This needs to be, it needs to be a given within the whole education spectrum to address cybersecurity, to address cybersecurity awareness, I would say.
Great point, Wouter. I mean, kids nowadays, elementary and middle school, are developing apps that can be sold and makes a lot of money and so on. Why shouldn't they be creating some awareness around security? It's a great point. Sasha, both head of IT as well as security, you heard on the previous panel, it's not just about data. There's connected systems being developed and so on and so forth. Can you share your thoughts as we think about WEF and the theme today, the fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation? What would you share from that perspective?
Well, from that perspective, I would share. I mean, we just went through with our company through this entire digital transformation, and what we just heard from the previous panel, what is really missed is, first of all, awareness, of course. So you realize that when you build a product or you do connected systems, that you need security by design. I mean, this is for sure. So you really need this baseline to have implemented. But then, you have the business challenge, because, it needs to be done quickly. There is no budget for it. It's a showstopper, So this is really what makes here, I think, the difference. But in the end, as we heard it here and the other panel and last year as well here, it's awareness, awareness, awareness. But there is no good system. For smaller companies, yes, it's like when you have 1,000, 2,000 employees, you can do a targeted campaign just for your business. But if you enter the enterprise level and you have thousands of users worldwide, e-learning or some sessions and that's it, But this is not awareness. This is from an industry point of view. And I think from the school systems and everything, you also need to push this awareness quite on a young age. But then, there's a huge gap, and I think it's really, most education are focusing on technical stuff. Yeah. If the technical is not working, you switch to information security, InfoSec, that's it. But the human factor is not taught, particularly, not at all. If you look on the trainings out there, it's always missed. The human factor is quite often missed, but it's always one of the biggest risks you have. So I think this is something, we have to think about.
Sasha, let's start back on your end. I have a question for you. You have 3 folks here that are also teaching in the university system. You have a dean, you have definitely the law school space as well. What is missing for you as head of IT as you're looking at your workforce? What are universities doing well maybe and not doing well?
Sure. I think that's a very good question, but I have a perfect example. First of all, what Nazia said is the war of talents. Yeah. First of all, if you want to hire a guy for my team, for example, I have to pay fortune, for his salary. This is one thing. So if you don't have the budget for that, what you do, you take the young people from your teams, which maybe did the apprenticeship, you push them, you give them the education, the training. What is, from my perspective, missed is this entire ecosystem. So you have a young guy, 20 years old, very, very talented. You give him new tools, new challenges which blow up your mind, and he does it in 2 hours. So definitely he's a talent. Okay, so what is the education you give him? So you send him to a TISP training. Yeah, and I did that, and he came back last week, and he said to me, I said to him, you have to do now the certification. He said, no, but then I have to do it every 3 years, and it's, if I don't do it, he said he wants to do other things, and so this entire system, which you actually have in the medical system, you have to do. You need to pressurize, you need to go, you have theoretical things, you need updates, it's an entire ecosystem which pushes. This is completely missed from my point of view. So I have now this talented 20 years old guy, which is really full of energy. Just what do we do? Okay. What is the right path for him to grow and become a senior level?
And so the challenge is, you're saying that a career path.
Yes.
And I would love, Alan and Nasir to comment on this. But so a career path.
Yes.
But also, it's not a point in time. The individual needs to continuously learn.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because digital transformation. Look at some of our audience here. Who had known about 4 years ago about blockchain
Yes,
or connected car more than 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Alan, any thoughts on that point from Sasha?
No, I think that's right. I think that there has to be some way that we think about. Obviously, there's a lot of thought being given to what is the professional progression for a cybersecurity professional. What types of certifications, what type of coursework, at what level. I think that we need to think in the 2 dimensions about, that's great, kind of a vertical path. How do we get that person horizontal awareness so that there's often not often, but sometimes the complaint that you can't always bring the CISO or the CIO into the board discussion because they don't see the business perspective. Some CISOs and CIOs are excellent at that, and some struggle with that. Similarly, the general counsels are notoriously terrible for understanding any aspect of the business outside of the legal and regulatory concerns. How do we make sure that that person understands, that he or she really understands the operational prerogatives? One of the ways, of course, that we do that in government and in industry is by just subjecting people to a tabletop exercise. Force people to come around a table and put out a scenario and say, look, how would you respond to this? It only takes 5, 10, 30 minutes before people start stammering about, well, we'd figure that out, or I think we have a protocol for that. So I think that there needs to be more of a culture of, from a horizontal perspective, putting people in the room together with one another to understand exactly how they would react in a particular situation. That helps draw out a level of awareness. But we need to progress past that to a place where your professional education needs to include the foundations of that, so that when you're in that type of situation, you're working from an intermediate or an advanced level. You're not getting the basics then.
Wonderful, Alan. And Nasser, this is very timely because obviously we have built a class just for the law school, which kicks off actually this week. Can you comment on both the foundational setup as far as making sure our students from middle school, high school onwards need to have some foundational skills, but then at a university level, broad and having broad students, whether it's IT, security, business school folks, engineering folks, law school folks, how can they provide value in this space and learn more continuously?
Right, so at NYU for a long time we've realized that security is not just purely a technical problem, right? It's more than that. It's a policy problem, it's a business problem, it's a human behavior problem. So there are many things that we do. So for example, there's a joint program with the law school. Students come in, they take classes from the law school, they take classes from the engineering school, MJ teaches them engineering, and there's a general counsel teaching them law, right? And the students who get out of it now hopefully are folks who can talk to the board, right, when the time comes. Also, considering the fact that it's broader than simply technology, typical cybersecurity programs require you to have a computer science undergraduate or a strong computer science background before you start doing cybersecurity sort of courses. But there's really, that's really not necessary, right? So, for example, at NYU we have something called a bridge program, Bridge to Cybersecurity, whereby you come on in, right? And quickly, in a matter of 4 months or so, you could be from English, you could be from psychology, you could be from any background. You get sufficient knowledge, background knowledge, so now you're able to move into a cybersecurity degree, right? The third thing about the earlier question, the foundational.
Yeah.
So I think cybersecurity has to be taught to everyone, right? It's just like we teach safety and reliability to every engineer, whether they are chemical engineers or in engineering itself, we should be teaching cybersecurity to everyone. Right in the first programming class, we should be teaching how to write secure code. And more than that, right? We should be teaching cybersecurity across the school. I mean, there is this big initiative in the US about CS for all. The social scientists need to learn computer science. The business folks need to know computer science. Well, all of them also need to know cybersecurity. And we've not sort of reached that, the cybersecurity for all. And finally, as far as the model goes, right, the certifications and whether we are doing enough, I think as in academia, the current model we have is very transactional. You come on in, you give me $50,000. After 2 years, I give you a piece of paper, which is a master's degree, and bye-bye, it's done, right? I think we should change that because learning doesn't end with the acquisition of a credential, especially in technology, especially in cybersecurity. So we should create models which are subscription-like models, which are relationship-based models. So imagine you come on in, and there is a collection of learning experiences available, some few weeks, some maybe longer, some few days, and you take them as you need them. As your career is progressing, maybe tomorrow, 10 years later, you might need to learn something about law or something about blockchains, and you take them as you need, and then you string them along to then get degrees and certificates and things of that sort. And actually, the New York City governor has recently, the mayor has recently funded an initiative that I'm leading, which tries to build out something of that sort, right? In a small way, because very hard to change academia. This is a big change for academia, but at least the first steps of it.
Nasser, thank you. That's some great comments, and actually aligns well with what Oren was mentioning as well. Security, business, and he mentioned at the very end safety issues, right. And skill sets are different and changing. Wouter, I haven't forgotten about you. I wanted these guys to go first, but I wanted to get your thoughts on what you just heard. And now, how do you make sure you think about partnerships and going to market? And whether it's funding, more focused programs, more different types of models that are focused on educating the workforce.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there are several elements to this. If you look at to my organization, the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, we have members. We have 75 members. Most of them are countries. We have intergovernmental organizations. We have international organizations, and we have private companies. Besides that, we have a set of knowledge and implementing partners, so academia, think tanks, etc. And we have several pillars which we work on, so cybercrime, CERT, CIP, national cybersecurity strategies. But one important one is on education, and we call it the Working Group on Cybersecurity Skills and Education. In this working group, we act as an umbrella framework for trying to adopt the many different and good working initiatives which are out there, presented by many different stakeholders, and there are a lot of them. So for example, you have the private companies who have their own programs, such as Cisco with their networking academy. Palo Alto is doing a lot of stuff. Microsoft is doing a lot of stuff. You have UN organizations like UNODC and even ITU who have their programs, their academia, and then you have their national initiatives. And I would think within this working group we currently have, one of the most promising one is an initiative by U.S. government. It's called the NICE framework. The National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. This framework is being implemented already, I believe, by Homeland Security in the US, but it is at the current moment also being adopted by several other nations. And that is interesting, that they are working with this particular framework. So, for example, Australia, Canada, and Japan are already using this framework as a base, and trying to adjust this according to their own national and cultural needs. So this could be a very good example to be implemented more globally. But besides this, I would say bringing together existing initiatives, whether it is from private companies or from governments, bringing those together to learn from each other is really the most efficient way forward, I would say, because I would think it's almost impossible to develop some curricula as a global standard or something, and to implement it in all nations or in all companies. You have to each have their own perspective, and you have to learn from that and use the good elements within each program, and trying to use that for your own particular needs, whether it's within a company, a nation, or a region.
Okay, great points. You mentioned national, cultural, certainly building it, towards your needs of your country and so on. Now, I'm going to bring in diversity, right? Diversity into the topic here, and look at it from a global perspective. Again, great platform. And unless I misheard the previous panel, or unless somebody's arguing in this room, cybersecurity will be a challenge for some time to come. That means there is a demand there, and the capacity is not being addressed. So the capacity is fulfilled by students, universities, and so on and so forth, and of course continuously educating the workforce. But what about diversity? I would like to hear from the panelists, just to hear from, why is this the issue, of course, maybe some comments on that, but what could we do to try and address this issue as we move forward. You hear about girls who code, minorities are getting into the space. I was at a panel earlier in the morning talking about financial crime, where education is a big gap, and we need to focus on that, and so on and so forth. So I would love to start with that. Maybe, Sasha, if you can comment on that. And again, why do you think this is a challenge right now, and what could we do?
Sure. I think why is it a challenge? I mean, the challenge is because it's not globally standardized. That's why we're here. It's the topic of the panel. I know the NICE framework. I think this is a good approach, to be honest, to spread that globally. But you know, do you have that, what we also heard from Germany in the previous panel? Everyone is doing something. And for example, the UK, I know they established an excellence and center of excellence in 14 different universities, which they use for researchers and everything. But in the end of all these different initiatives, it ends up that we teach them knowledge, skills, and ability, you know. And I think this is something that maybe should be standardized across all programs in order to have a global approach on this. However you want to call it, then you can call it in a local, sure, whatever is needed. But in fact, what we need is a baseline of different knowledge, skills, and ability. But also, you know, trainings are missed completely that are problem solving, analytical training, you know, because what they do is to teach you for some problems, and you come out to the real world and then you don't know how to solve the problem, you know. And I think these are extra things we need to solve.
And just to follow up on that, so when you think about STEM and STEAM, and you know, definitely the focus on bringing arts into the picture, because it helps with looking at this from a diverse sort of a background and focus. There are obviously this panel. Next year, I would love to see you know, a couple of women on this panel as well, you know, and that can talk on this topic. But when you think about middle schoolers, high schoolers, you know, at NYU they do a Capture the Flag event where we bring in high school students to participate in that event, and you know, you're seeing a lot more women come into that picture. Any thoughts in terms of the workforce? What could we do to bring more women and minorities into the space, perhaps? Anyone? Walter? Yeah?
Sure. Well, I think it's already an ongoing process at the moment. Simply given the fact that that there is a workforce shortage, and so it's not only good if more women get into cybersecurity, because it's an exciting job, and it's being considered by women as an exciting job, but also simply given the fact that they are hardly needed for society and for industry. So that shows, given that many large companies are setting up programs starting at the young, for kids at a young age. IBM is doing a lot on that. Tomorrow there is a launch by the European Cybersecurity Organization, which is an implementing organization for the European Union. They are launching a Women for Cyber initiative. So it is being acknowledged both by governments as by companies, but it is a challenge to make it fancy, so to speak, and interesting for women. But I think it's already ongoing. If you look at if you're looking at high schools and universities, much more women are getting involved in this, and this is a very good development.
Introduce it at an early age. And before I get to Alan, just again, think of a couple of questions, folks. We may have time for 2 to 3 questions, so we'd love to get your questions there. Alan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that as different industries have struggled with this issue, there are some structural challenges, and then there's some human challenges. Structurally, it's interesting, you know, where did cybersecurity talent come from? Oren is a good example, coming from the military, or coming up from an interest in playing around with computers. These have been historically male things. And so breaking apart some of that, I think helps. Likewise, you talked at the beginning about elite universities and making it easier, pushing down that into community colleges, into in the United States, things like historically black college and colleges and universities, places where you're likely to find more diverse talent pool, help with those structural issues. But I think it's what's super important is the sergeant level problem. Mentors. You have to have people who can show the way and who can mentor. And it doesn't have to be people of the same minority group, but it has to be people who want to help people, see people succeed. So that's number one. And then the second is to recognize the different ways that people come into things. I was fascinated. My daughter, who is a freshman in high school, had always resisted anything involving coding. Never wanted to touch Minecraft, never wanted to do anything of that nature. But a couple of her friends encouraged her to do a computer science class with them this year, and she loves it. And she loves the coding, and she loves the subjects, and it's a mix of technical and non-technical. So we also have to recognize that all people feel more comfortable doing things together and feel more comfortable being invited into things. Most people, some people like to do things alone, but I think helping that mentorship side and helping to create the more social and more inviting aspects into this industry are critically important as well.
That's great. Awareness is important, and security is not just penetration testing, right? There's a lot more to it.
Right, that's an important part, because I've been running summer camps for high school girls, after school clubs for women in high schools in New York City. I've been running them for quite some time, and there's a lot happening. The number of women is increasing, and there are others, not just me. The government is funding these initiatives. Less so with African Americans and other minorities, right? So when I've run these large competitions for high school students and undergrads, we've done focus studies and groups and things like that. And one of the things I think with some inner city schools, etc., is they just don't even have the computer equipment to play around, right? And to sort of poke around and learn these things on their own, and the schools are not teaching them that, right? So there's a lack of teachers and lack of curriculum, which sort of gets them engaged with that. And also, as far as women goes, there's another interesting twist to cybersecurity that we discovered. I've written a couple of papers about it. Is that women don't like to break things, right? Hack things, so when you tell them that cybersecurity is more about protecting and sort of catching the bad guys, that sort of attracts them more. The second thing also is that stereotype of cybersecurity is a lone man sort of thing, or a lone person thing. We're sitting in a basement like reverse engineering or trying to hack in somewhere or something of that sort. No, it's a team effort. It's a very collaborative sort of career, a career where you work in teams, and making them understand this and have real models, women who come in and speak to them on a regular basis, understand this, I think addresses that issue to some extent. Yeah.
Some great points, guys. We may have some time. We have some time for 1 to 2 questions. Any questions, please?
Tom Patterson, Chief Trust Officer at Unisys. I love that there is the panel on education. Love what you said. Just wanted to ask you to maybe highlight more on the youngest level of education. I still see a lot of programs that start in high school, and high school's good. It's better than college and grad school. We're making progress. But where I've gotten involved in different cities around the U.S., we started at age 6, and we start with Scratch, which is a wonderful coding program, free of charge, no barrier to entry at all. And we have 6-year-olds that go through Scratch and are coding Python at 6. There is no barrier that I've seen, and to your point, the most disadvantaged parts of town tends to be where I like to start. Tablets cost $35 now. Internet Wi-Fi is available now. The barriers to entry of needing all this equipment, everything can be done in the cloud now. I think for the cost of a lunch here, couldn't we really get in and make that change? Davos is about change and really making action. Could you comment a little bit about getting past the barriers and go even further?
Well, I think it's interesting. Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, right? He talks a lot about this. He has a program in Los Angeles that's to try to get kids into robotics. But he emphasized, in addition to getting the equipment and the people, he emphasized that you have to look at the dynamics, the social dynamics of the environment. What are people looking for at that age? At an elementary school, middle school, people are looking socially to belong to things, People are looking for social experiences, and unfortunately, as he pointed out, in places like inner city Los Angeles and elsewhere, people join gangs. So he kind of looked at that model and said, well, look, the gangs go recruiting kids at around 10, so we're going to try to catch them at about 8. But we're going to mimic some of the same things, which is this is a community. This is it's not just you programming in Scratch or you building an elementary robotics. This is a thing that you do. And so I think that all of the points, Tom, that you made are excellent, and I think it should be married with that sense of kids, what do kids at that age want to do? How do you make it broader than just the kids who might be otherwise disposed to playing around with robotics or programming, and make it part of the social or competitive environment that the kids operate in anyway?
Please, one last question. Go ahead.
So I wanted to follow on from that because I think it's a really fundamental point. The thing we've done in the UK Python conference this year for the very first time, we have an initiative where we buy kit and we give kit, and that's been, the Raspberry Pi Foundation has been amazing to get the skill of Python. And yeah, you're right about Scratch. I've got young people as young as 4 coding in Python who can't be doing with that entry level. And I think, we misunderstand their ambition. But what we did this year was very different. In terms of actually funding our places at the conference, we funded ours +1. And so we ran, alongside the 3-day conference, a conference of 4 to 14-year-olds. Why was that important? They loved that the cream of the Python industry was right with them. They were coding alongside their heroes. And actually, their heroes, a lot of our community is way under 30. And so they're just a little bit further than them. Okay, 10 years, but a little bit further than them. That's actually inspirational in a whole different way. So from a tech industry point of view in the UK, we're saying it's actually down to us. And we're part of that future workforce provision, and we have to make it happen. So we're, enroll one, pay for one.
Fantastic, and great points around the opportunity there are a lot of big companies in this room and watching us as well. Great opportunities for partnership between private and public to help address this. Well, last comments, maybe a quick 20 seconds from each of you. Maybe we'll start at the end, Sasha?
Yes, I think it's when you hear from private or from the academic sector, I think we have to do something. It needs to start very, very soon, but first we need to align.
Okay, thank you. Wouter?
Yes, public-private partnerships, international cooperation, learning from each other, that's really the key and the starting point.
Thank you. Alan?
One of the things that we do in one of our signature classes at Georgetown Law is we teach students the background in cyber and incident management and national security, and then we put them into a scenario. And they come out, and not only did they learn something, but it was fun and it was exciting and it was a team effort. So let's bring in those aspects to this education.
Great point. Let's not just keep it to corporations, right? Yeah. Nasir?
And there needs to be better cooperation between academia and industry to design learning experiences. Right now there is a gap between the two, and so we need to find ways to sort of develop programs jointly with industry and academia.
Well, folks, thank you. This was a wonderful panel. Appreciate everyone providing their thoughts. Thank you.